Piyush, welcome to this episode of Vartalap. Great to see you. How are you doing?
All good, Aman. It's really great to see you. Time just flew by. It's been 16 years. We have sort of
Yes.
maybe talked to each other or seen each other. So
Yeah.
it's really good to see you. Looking forward to this discussion.
One thing probably you might not know of is that you were my first LinkedIn contact, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, that was a great achievement for me personally.
Hope that is going to bring you a good luck.
Yes, surely. So, for my listeners, Piyush is a thoroughbred technologist with a very good business acumen. He has more than 15 plus years of work experience, currently working as Senior Director Software Engineering at PowerAxle. He has built an enterprise software products for several industries, is a triple ITV alumnus like me. Anything that you wish to add to your profile, Piyush?
No, this probably covers the things from a current position perspective. Apart from that, couple of other areas where I spend my time, which is sort of giving back to, let's say, community as well as helping the students or the
Mhm.
fellow mates. Is I'm a guest faculty at BITS Pilani for the Work Integrated Program, and
Okay.
also I'm a mentor at Atal Innovation Mission, which is a
Okay.
initiative by NITI Aayog for
Uh-huh.
both at the school levels for the students as well
Oh.
as for the incubator startups.
Okay, that's called Atal Incubator Center, something like that, right?
So the whole mission is called Atal Innovation Mission. They call it
Okay.
as like AIM, and in that they have two streams. One is Atal Tinkering Labs, which is
Okay.
more towards focusing on schools, and then there is
Uh-huh.
an Atal Incubation Center,
Yeah.
which is more towards the startups.
Okay, great. That's good news, surely. So, several years into, or close to 2 decades, I'll say, in terms of technology platforms, software engineering, India is moving more towards products, you will say, rather than services now, especially in the digital area.
Uh, to me, products and services are very sort of loose terms
Hmm.
because different people have got different understanding of what is a product and what is a service.
Yeah.
Okay, so it depends upon in what context you're asking. A product company can also say that we are a services company. Okay, it
Hmm.
depends upon what they're giving back to the client. In a broad, so again, to answer your question, I don't think there is a specific one side answer to that question. It all depends upon which industry we are talking about. uh, if you're looking from, let's say, money perspective, okay, the services probably will be giving more money if it has been merged with the products. So, for example, let's say if we take our industry, okay, and in our industry, which is like a pharma companies, and we build, let's say, a software product. Okay, so now if we sell off a software product, the amount of money that we can charge to a client will be a certain thing. But if we provide a service on top of the software that we are providing, which is basically like if we develop a product and then we provide a premium service on top of those products, the charge that could be basically put upon that could be much more than just the product. So
Right.
again, it depends upon in which context we are looking at. Are we looking
Hmm.
at pure like just as a software providers where you do things in a project manner?
Hmm.
Uh, then in that case, yes, they are going to basically do more on the project side. But
Hmm.
on the product companies as well, they are moving more and more towards the premium service, even though underlying they do have a product. From
So,
if
just
if you look just to finish
sure,
that,
sure,
if you look
sure.
just from a product perspective,
Hmm.
maybe volume will play the big game there. So if you have
Hmm.
a big volume of customers, subscribers and all, that's where a pure product could basically to a good extent.
So for me, to simplify things, a product simply means more in terms of a digital entity. It could be a mobile app, that could be a product. It could be in terms of a platform that is providing microservices wherein I am earning revenue through any derived statistics or derived services that I provide. Services is pure project-based play. The biggies are like Infosys, Wipro, they do it day in and day out in terms of consultancy services or other kinds of services. So I'm looking more in terms of product and platform evolution. What I have seen personally is there is a very large growth in terms of startups coming up where there is digital product evolution. There are a number of problems to be solved. So in that context, I wanted to understand: do you see an evolution of product and platforms in that context, moving away from the services?
Again, yes and no from a perspective like what are the target consumers here. So the way I would like to see that is, or I see that is, uh, typically the whole industry is moving towards standardization. Okay, they don't want to sort of reinvent the wheel.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's where they will look for if there is a tried and tested product or a digital entity that is already there in the market, and can they just consume it rather than asking a software provider to build that from a scratch as a project. Okay, but it again depends upon the appetite of that company, whether they can afford that product or not, or whether their business processes are aligned so that they can configure a product for their needs and all. So in a broader perspective, yes, it is probably more moving towards products and platform for standardization perspective. But again, there will be a lot of ifs and buts in terms of adopting it. So on paper, yes, but in actuality, it might differ depending upon the industry and the level of the competency and the skills of the individual organization who wants to adopt digital innovation.
So I'll just come back on the product theme. You might have heard of Ramco's enterprise product. A lot of people in India would not be familiar that Ramco has been a product company for several decades now. Finacle as a product came out of Infosys, and beyond that, there has hardly been anything else. So in these contexts, what do you think is sort of a growth path for India? NASSCOM is also talking about product focus in the country. So we want to move away from pure services play. We want to get into product. How do you see that sort of evolution happening in the country?
Okay, again, see, if you look from a services company perspective, although from an external world, it looks more like they are doing a project, but actually they, most of the time they were working like a system integrators, or they're working like a configuration project on top of a product.
Yeah.
Now, the amount of work that is happening, which is scratch up just like a project, that is diminishing.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's the trend where each of these companies are also sort of moving. So let's say, giving an example, let's say our organization build a lot of software products, and there
Mhm.
are a lot of services companies which provide services on top of our products from
Yeah.
a configuration as well as system integration. So,
Yeah.
and again, that basically goes back to my previous comment that
Mhm.
services has got different meanings, and
Mhm.
it all depends upon from which perspective and from which industry we are looking at that word.
Okay, so I mean, just taking that, stretching that argument further, which industries do you see are probably spawning more products or platforms currently? Is it more around finance? Is it more around logistics? Is it more around hospitality? Where do you
I think
pinpoint things?
I think it is all over. I mean,
Mhm.
every industry or every sort of domain is moving towards the standardization. So there will be a lot of products that you will be seeing almost in every industry. Now it
Mhm.
depends upon, for that whole digital adoption,
Mhm.
different industries are at different state of that curve. There are
Mhm.
few industries which are sort of slightly ahead of the curve where they have done a lot of these standardization. A lot of products are there in the market and they are basically capitalizing on that.
Mhm.
Standardization has happened for the small players as well. And then there are few industries where people are still catching up. So to answer your question, almost every industry is where people are moving towards products and platforms, whether how soon they have started and what is sort of the regulatory needs, the statutory needs, the adoption appetite of that industry will define where that sort of domain is in the adoption cycle.
So, just taking an example of, say, finance industry or specifically banking within it, each bank currently operates its own digital apps, and they are asking consumers to probably download and use apps. In Germany, while I was there, an app in the form of a mobile bank was launched. It was called N26. No
Mhm.
branches, simply mobile only bank. Do you see Indians also, or Indian industry, Indian consumers moving to something like that, a bank without branches, or is it too early for India?
I think it is. I would say that we are moving towards it. I mean, if you look at it in last 2 3 years, the amount of digitization that's happened in India, probably we would have not expected that it will happen that quickly. I mean, there are various things that has happened by, let's say, different governments towards that. So I think we are moving at a quite good pace. But I don't think, looking at the volume that we have, looking at the variety of people that we have, different levels of educations, different level of, let's say, social security and all of those pieces, still we do have quite varying sort of behavioral things in which people are comfortable in different aspects. And with a sheer volume of things that we have, it is not easy to eradicate a set process overnight. So it will basically reach to its state where we will be having a lot of digitizations across the board, but probably it will take its own time to reach to those states.
Okay. So one thing, getting to the technical side of it, in terms of products and platforms, there is a lot of hullabaloo and buzz around microservices based platform.
Mhm.
Where do you think that need is coming from? Every industry, the platforms, everybody going in terms of microservices, is it going to become a norm?
Again, on microservices adoption, there are multiple reasons. Some are right, and some probably follow a level in which like people just follow the herd. So
Mm-hmm.
like rest of the industry is doing it, so it should be good, and we will just follow it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a combination of that. Having said that, microservices architecture is sort of giving a lot of value back. I mean, few of the
Mm-hmm.
things that you can look at it is, if you really require scalability, if you want to basically do parallel development for various streams, if you want to have your code maintainable. I mean, if you want to, some of the other areas could be like, if you want to basically deploy things without disrupting a good portion of your business, or if you want to just take care of things for specific days, like let's say $1 billion sale day or all of those pieces and all, you don't have to sort of scale up the whole application. There could be a part of your services that requires to be scaled up, and microservices architecture supports that, because in that you probably will be having different streams, different domains, where you can just take care of one domain and then you can extend that domain to whatever is the needs. So it does have good amount of things which basically creates a lot of benefits, specifically if you're having a large scale systems. So if you are having a large scale systems, then yes, microservices architecture is something which is going to give you a significant boost. But I would basically, my recommendation will be like, just don't go blindly for microservices architecture. This architecture comes with lot of other challenges as well, because you are splitting a business process into multiple things. You are duplicating the data, you are duplicating some part of the process to achieve things in a faster manner, and that requires synchronization, that requires some amount of coordination, both in terms of development as well as in terms of the maintenance. So it has its own pros and cons, is what I would say. Definitely it has got a lot of benefits, but it also depends upon what is the business problem that you are trying to solve, and for that business problem, whether microservice architecture is the right architecture to basically use for.
Can you cite any example, somebody who is doing this very right in terms of Indian industry and Indian context? Somebody who is bringing an open API architecture with microservices behind it?
Probably will not be able to name the companies, but I mean there are a lot of sort of companies which requires which basically provides a lot of open APIs for the
Mhm.
external way to do it. So in other words, any company which basically provides a platform for their internal external customers,
Yeah.
that's probably will be one of the good use cases for that. And I mean, if you look around, there are good number of things, whether it's music industry, whether it's the e-commerce industry, whether it is sort of finance, some of the finance industry, some of the payment things and all. So there are good number of cases where you can this is something which has already been implemented. I mean, recently it has been a lot of this is sort of adopted in the sort of apparel industry as well, although that we can see that as a part of the e-commerce. But even small players who are not having end-to-end e-commerce capability, even a slice for a specific domain, are also looking for these ones, because they do have that much transactions and that much volume on their sort of say, websites and their business, that it makes sense to sort of segregate their domains and then scale their domains up and down using some of these architecture concepts.
Not sure if you would have seen the Yes Bank's open API architecture. They became kind of a pioneer, but they have been infamous due to other reasons. So I was really confounded with what they were developing. That was something very critical to that industry while bringing in an open API architecture.
Yeah, I mean, Open API, if you look at it, it's basically becoming a standard. I mean, it's not just about the finance industry,
Yeah.
because API, if you look from a technology perspective, it doesn't matter what API is doing. API is an API. Okay, so
Yeah.
an Open API is an API standard. So it's not just limited to the finance industry. If you look at any of the other industry, majority of the people are sort of using it, and there are a lot of software products that are coming now, which will be basically doing a design-based APIs, in which the whole pieces of whether it is versioning, whether it is patching, whether it's a scalability, whether it's logging, alerting, all of those components are being built in as part of these ones, whether it is Swagger Hub or whether it's the other pieces and all. There are a lot of tools which are out there which are helping the people to sort of adopt all the best practices and then build these APIs from a design thinking rather than just a domain term thinking.
Okay, so behind any technology jargon, there is data, and microservices or open API architecture is exposing that data in large volume to external services or people who want to build application on top of it. What do you think in terms of data privacy? So Europe has their own GDPR. India is looking at its own data protection law. Where do you think will India stand in say a couple of years in terms of safeguarding, especially personally identifiable information or my health data or banking data? How do you see that panning out?
Yeah, I mean the data bill has sort of been which is sort of approved just in December, and if you look at the bill, it's a 50-page document,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a good amount of thing that needs to be consumed. Like, what do you mean by personal data? Like, whether for what you can basically, so like there are clauses in which for some processing, for some specific context-based processing, you can push the data outside the country, but the storage has to happen within the country. So I mean. There are a lot of nitty-gritties and a lot of intricacies that needs to be understand to look at the implications overall. Having said that, I mean, at a larger perspective, it is good because in a manner, we are giving control back to the people
Mm-hmm.
for whom the data is. Like, they can decide whether what they want to do with the data. So in a way, it is more good from a democracy perspective that people have got a control on who should be seeing their own personal data.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to storage, now again, it has its own pros and cons. I mean, like whether the data should be stored in the same country or it can be stored in a different geography and all. So I probably would not be able to comment whether it is good or bad as a summary, but it has its own pros and cons. I mean, if you look from a government perspective, it is a big pro that government have the big almost sort of the data of the sort of citizens are not going out, so they probably have a good control on that. If you look from a software providers, if you look from an people who needs to just comply to these regulations, it could be a big overhead because all of a sudden now they need to start thinking that if they have users in, let's say, 5 locations, and they have just one software to catering for that, they still need to split the data and then maybe stored in 5 different data centers because the individual countries doesn't allow to let the data go out of the country, and they still need to sync a lot of things because for their reporting, for their various things and all, they still need to have an aggregated data. So from a software provider perspective, the people who wants to sort of consume this data, store this data, this could be a bit more challenging. Uh, but that's part of the game. I mean, there are different regulations that everybody needs to
Mm-hmm.
follow if they want to stay in the game. So it could be in that manner. They need to just abide for that. So it could be a boon for a lot of other companies as well, in a manner that, let's say, if India basically do that, and uh, so let's say all the cloud providers, they need to ensure that they have right set of data centers, although we still have, but they need to further ensure that the data storage and the various data center needs that are there for this region is almost at the same level as any other region. And it is not just about the big cloud provider, that might help to bring some local cloud provider as well. So it again, as I said earlier, it has its own pros and cons depending upon like, it will create more work for some part, which will be a sort of a benefit for a set of segment of the industry, and it will be a pain for set of segment of the industry because they need to be more compliant and they need to have all those checks and balances in their software products and routines to ensure that they are compliant to it.
So I'll leave the company part out. I'll come to the consumer part. The company part, that it reminds me that Amazon is looking to open their data centers, or they might have already opened some in India. They are
Mm-hmm.
surely looking to comply with certain laws within the country. Even though the data protection law is not yet passed, I think it's still in a draft stage as far as I know. Russia and China do store their their personal data or their consumer data within the country as well. So India is within its rights to do that. There would be pros and cons, but there is other aspect in terms of being a consumer. Imagine 50 crore people in India using apps, digital apps over smartphones. How many people understand that when they download and use an app, there are certain uh, services, or there are certain privileges that they are assigning to that app owner in terms of the sensors which are there on the phone, be it GPS, be it any other, be it my location sensor, be it any other sensor. I am passing that information as a privilege to somebody reading my messages, somebody utilizing other sensors. So that is also happening. How do you educate people that these are the things which are being used in your app and your data is being used?
Yeah, I think that's a bit tough thing. I mean, because again, as I said earlier, like we have a quite varying crowd in terms of the levels of exposure that people have towards some of these cyber things. Like what it is means by personal information. I mean, because if you want to start, you probably will needs to have a common definition of what is meant by personal information. Because if you ask 10 people, probably like all 10 will have a different understanding of what is personal information means.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I don't think there is any silver bullet for that, Aman. That we probably it is more that people over the time will start getting more and more aware of things, and they probably and some of the things that probably app owners or the government can start doing it is what they are doing now is to ensure that the consent, like even if we install an app, it basically asks for a consent. Okay,
Yeah.
so one of the factor that, so it is not that app is doing it. I mean, if app is doing it without telling it, it is anyway illegal. Okay, but most of the app, they basically pop up a page and then they show what is something that is there. And in general, people are sort of maybe, like as you said, are not much aware of what it means really. Okay,
Yeah.
if someone's using their location, what does that really mean, whether it is while using app, whether it is all the time in the background, and how they're
Yeah.
going to use that information, whom they're passed to. So
Yeah.
I don't think it will happen again in a shorter time in which everybody will start understanding the use of that data. And most of the time, actually, people doesn't care. Okay, what they care more is in terms of what value that they're getting back immediately.
Yeah.
Okay, because in general, they don't feel that it is too sort of risky to share that information. It's fine if somebody knows I'm here, uh, they might be okay with that. So it again depends upon like how much sensitive individuals are towards sharing this own data, and that probably will define from a restriction perspective. That what could be done is more about to ensure that the consents are being done. Just to give a sort of a bit analogy to our industry, when the clinical trial started long back, I mean, there was no consent. Then there was a consent with paper. Then before that, there was a verbal consent, and then over the period, it becomes a video consent. So in India, like video consent is one of the mandatory things. Needs to be explained in the same language what the clinical trial patient understands. So like this, there might be a lot of reform that could keep on coming on the consent side if government starts seeing that there's a significant amount of misuse of that data, what the app owners are connecting.
Yeah, I mean, surely if an individual cannot articulate, it's the job of the government to articulate that and put it in the form of a law and draft, which the app owners
Yeah.
need to fulfill. So at least that should happen.
Yeah, I mean, at this moment, but some of these things will never have a picture perfect thing to start with. Okay,
Yeah.
if you look at any law, if you look at any guidelines, it has its own iteration, and
Yeah.
whether it is cyber laws or even our normal laws that we follow on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I basically see this as the same thing. I mean, data protection law comes with a sort of initial clauses. I mean, people might find loopholes, people might exploit it, and then more and more those cases will come up. There will be always keeps on reform that will be happening, and there will be always a sort of a tribunal or sort of an authority which will keep revisiting it. So it's not necessary that something has to happen and then only they will update it. So I'm sure that the government will basically have a set of people who will be continuously watching what should be the right amendment to some of these laws to ensure the safety for the people.
Yeah. So something that we have not discussed is more around how is upskilling or reskilling happening in these digital times. There is a need for both soft skills as well as hard skills, be it in terms of cloud, AI, machine learning, big data, and so on. And then there are the soft skills, which will
Mhm.
probably remain even in a AI world where there are lesser number of jobs probably going to be in future, wherein somebody being able to intuitively work and guide creativity, leadership skills, team building, team formation, those sort of skills will still be in demand. How do you see this upskilling and reskilling happening in next coming few years, which is very critical for India's growth as well?
Yeah, I think upskilling is always something which is the need of the hour. I mean, whether it was like say 10, 15 years back, or whether it will be 10, 15 years after, because the industry we are in, or in general any industry, the way or with the pace the industry is moving, probably like every morning when we wake up, there will be a new technology, there will be a new language, or there will be a new tool that
Yeah,
will be out there in the market
yeah,
that needs to basically learn for some of the other aspects.
yeah.
So I think people needs to invest time in that, and each management in each organization should basically bring some measures in their curriculum to motivate the folks towards doing that. I mean, because uh, sometimes our industry could be ruthless in a manner that if you are not properly in the game, and you're not adding the right value to the organization, it could be basically alarming for that individual. So I think it is a necessity to ensure that you keep on upskilling. So on a technology side, again, I mean, there is no end, and again, it depends upon the domain. You might have different skills and the different tools that you need to learn. For me, if I need to pick top three skills or the technologies that are sort of booming and could be a good career option for anyone, will be security, artificial intelligence, and DevOps. Those are the top three skills for me. I mean, if any of the graduate or any of the uh, person with a sort of less years of experience, or even if who wants to upskill, ask me, probably I would ask them to basically work on one of these three areas to get more expertise.
What do you think about cloud, blockchain, or IoT? Wouldn't they be good harbingers of careers as well?
I mean, see, there will not be any skills or any technology which doesn't have a place. Okay, I
Mhm,
mean, whether you talk about IoT, whether you talk about blockchain and
mhm.
all, but out of the, I mean, all the three that I basically talked about, I felt that those are cross-cutting. So
Okay.
whether if you use blockchain, which you use IoT, you need to
Mhm,
have security in place.
mhm.
You
Yeah,
need to have DevOps in place.
yeah.
And the way artificial intelligence is going, and again, I know that's probably a very broad term, and I mean, probably everything can fall under that in some way or the other.
Mhm,
But that is what is the sort of next wave, where let's say even if you take example of IoT, I
mhm,
mean, unless until you are not able to use the data in a meaningful manner and draw
mhm.
conclusions out of that, probably there is not much in use in terms of storing the data through the IoT event hubs and all. So I would basically consider that how safe is the data is what security is.
Yeah,
Uh, how you can basically what value that you can get back from the data, which is what is artificial intelligence,
yeah,
and how do you ensure that you are doing a faster delivery and bringing a faster value to your consumers is what is DevOps for me. And
yeah.
those are sort of three building blocks for any industry, any software, any process.
So one last question, Piyush. You mentioned design thinking on the way. There is design thinking which is probably getting a lot of traction. There is a clamor for user experience a lot, whatever you do these days. How do you see that fitting in within these technologies?
Okay, I think again these things are cross-cutting, and so so okay. The way I look at it is what you want to achieve and how you want to basically going to achieve it. Okay, so some of these customer experience, some of these sort of design thinking and all is ensuring is that you are getting a right what. Okay, and the technologies will come at a second stage in which you will define and you will basically build a how for that what. So
Yeah.
for me, design thinking and UX, whether it is, you can call it as a customer experience, you can call it as a user experience, everything basically ensures that what you are building is right. The technologies will basically ensure that you, sorry, the other way around, what you are building is the right thing, and the other thing with technology will basically talk about whether you are building it in right manner.
Okay, great insights, Piyush. It's been lovely to hear your perspectives, and I'm sure some of our listeners will be interested in as well, despite some of the technical lingo that we discussed, which is absolutely fine. But it's been a pleasure to have you today on Vartalap. And in case there are any questions, I'll be happy to pass them on to you as well.
Oh, sure. It was a nice discussion. I mean, a lot of times we have been sort of so bogged down in our daily work that
Mm.
we don't sort of discuss things at a broader perspective. So, yeah, I mean, it is good to sort of share some of these thoughts in terms of some of the questions that you've asked. And happy to sort of share any thoughts or any questions that you have as a follow up. And or if there is any sort of a similar panel discussion somewhere
Yeah.
where you think I could contribute in any manner, happy to be
So,
part of that.
yeah, I'll surely invite you to a multi-person chat someday on Vartalab. So that's going to happen in future. Thanks a lot for your time today. Wish you a good afternoon and a happy and safe life as well.
Okay, thanks a lot, Aman. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.